Rashesh Shah joining in, Chairman of Edelweiss Group. As we break up the budget, Mr. Shah, thank you so much for speaking with us. It's been quite a day, and Finance Minister saved the best for the last, made sure that there was a grand exit after that budget speech. Do you think that this is the tonic that was required for the economy?
Yeah, I think raising the tax slab and making sure up to 12 lakh rupees no tax is paid is a big boost, especially urban demand, because our urban consumption had been slowing down. So I think that was a big move. And obviously, as you said, she held it for the last because this was, I think, the highlight of the entire budget. The other highlight, I would say, is the announcement of the new income tax code. I think that was long awaited. We have a lot of expectations out of that because that will simplify the long old, the long complicated income tax code that we have had. So I think that will be a good one. For people like us, I think the 100% FDI in insurance is a very bold announcement. It was on the anvil for a long time, but there were a lot of political pushes and pressures on that. So I think even that announcement shows that the government wants to grow the insurance industry, which is actually going to be also required because the long-term capex, capital formation, insurance is going to play a big role because a lot of the long-term capital comes from insurance savings in India. So I think all these are good moves. I always believe that I think India needs to grow at 8% a year. I do think the announcement in the budget of, it appears that the growth rate will be 6.8 or so in real terms and about 10.1 in nominal terms is too low. I was hoping that we have 11 to 12% nominal GDP growth rate, which means we need to be at between 7 to 8% GDP growth rate. So I would have been happy with more aggressive moves on consumption as well as government capex. I think the first half government capex will be very critical. So whatever they're spending for the year, if they can front end it and spend it in the first half, it will be very helpful. But overall, I think fairly conservative approach to the overall fiscal deficit. And I think the idea is to keeping in mind the bond market. India is going to be part of the global bond indices. We should get a lot of bond inflows into India. I think the idea is to keep that in mind. And, historically we've seen if you try to keep the bond market investors happy, the equity market investors are not happy. And if you keep the equity market investors happy, the bond market investors are not happy.
That's true. But has this budget done that act of doing what is necessary right now, Mr. Shah, part one? But very quickly, I'm squeezing in one more question. This insurance FDI moving from 75 to 100, it's not that at 75% too many people were selling off their stakes any which ways. So this move, symbolic as it is, does it result into any specific gains? I mean, I know you are maybe a related party too, so I'm kind of tongue-in-cheek asking you this question.
It will help a lot. There are a lot of global large insurance companies which have been wanting to come to India, and either they could not find a good partner or they wanted 100% control. So I think 100% it will spur investments in the industry because, as you know, the first round of investment in insurance happened via the banks. But as we all know, banks are now, they don't have so much capital surplus anymore. So the next round of investments will not come from banks or the corporate houses in India, but will come from the foreign investors. So I think the international insurance companies, strategic investors will see this 100% FDI insurance as a big move. It will spur more capital into insurance sector. I think, IRDA has announced insurance for all by 2047. I think that will need a lot of capital. So I'm hoping that will also happen. So overall, I think insurance good. Capex, I do think private capex will only come when demand picks up. Neeraj, we've been seeing capacity utilization hover at about 75. I've always seen that capacity utilization, when it crosses 80, is where the private capex will start. So I think we are still far away from private capex driving the economy in big way. Exports will also not be a big driver in this current year because there are a lot of global changes that are happening. So I think government capex will be a big one, and the middle class consumption, especially urban consumption, will be a driver. I think both of them have got enough in this particular budget. But I would have been happy with a slightly more aggressive growth.
Mr. Shah, you mentioned about happy with a slightly aggressive growth. So what do you think should have been the give from the government? Because at least on the taxation front, it seems that they have incentivized the middle class, right? And when you talk about the capex, yes, it is going to be important that the government needs to spend in the first half, but to add to that, you need the private players to come in. Now, if that combination does not help, where do you see us?
See, the private players have not come in for last 4-5 years. You remember in 2019, we had cut the corporate taxes in India, waiting for the private sector to step up on capex. I think there are many reasons for that, but one of the most important one is the when we had urban consumption, the rural consumption was not there. Then COVID happened. Now the rural consumption is picking up, but the urban consumption is still pretty soft. And along with that, as I said, capacity utilization is not crossing 80%. So I think that will be the precursor to private capex. So I would have been more happy with more aggressive government capex for this year to be announced. I would have been more happy with, maybe more income tax relief for spending, consumption across, for foreign travel, all of that. If there were more, specific stuff which would have said that we want to spur consumption, that would have been good. Along with that, I think if there was a bold announcement that we want to go for 8% growth and lay the groundwork, even if the FM had said that by 27 we want to be at 8% growth, so then the coming year FY26 is more like a bridge year to that, it would have been a lot more helpful in boosting, because the biggest problem is growth expectations. Unless growth expectations come back, animal spirits will not come back. Unless animal spirits come back, capex and all will still be muted as it has been.
Just getting your take, Mr. Shah, on why do you think the market has reacted the way it has to the budget right now? Is it the nominal GDP growth number that you mentioned about, the feeling that the tax cuts are maybe not going to be enough and capex boost is what was needed?
Yeah, I think the market, but I also must admit, I think there was not a lot that the FM could have done to really boost growth in the short term. I believe that the RBI policy a week down the line will be more important for short term. So if you look at bank stocks and all, they have come back a little bit, but I don't think any announcement in the budget really affects the banks in the short term. I think RBI has a much larger impact. So I think the next week is going to be a lot more important from the growth expectation. I think the first half of the coming year, growth has to come back. We need to get back to 6.5 to 7% growth as fast as we can, because that is the minimum growth that we need to keep the optimism, the animal spirits, all of that going.